Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my October reflections. So usually I jump right into the decks, but I do just want to share a couple of exciting things that happen in October. So we're going to kind of do those first, then we'll take a look at the decks, and then we'll chat about some of the things coming up in November. So one of the sort of really exciting things that happened in October was that I don't know if you noticed, but like I hit 10,000 subscribers. I just want to say, first of all, a big thank you to all of my subscribers that keep coming back week after week to watch my content. I am so thrilled and so blessed to have you all as a part of my life. It's amazing, and you guys are amazing, and I cannot even tell you how thankful I am and how blessed I feel to have all of you, and that you invite me into your homes, into your practice every week. I just really want to say thank you to all of you for being there, for supporting me, for watching my videos, for commenting, liking, all that kind of good stuff. Definitely want to say thank you to all of you, because you all make it worth it, right? You all make the time and effort I put into my videos worth it, and so I just want to say thank you for that. So now that I've had a chance to say thank you to all of you, let's go ahead and flip the camera around and take a look at some of the decks that I worked with throughout the month of October. So in October, I tend to like to work with my sort of darker, maybe a little bit spookier decks. I do not have very dark and spooky decks in my collection overall, so what I do have generally fits into the whole month of October for me. So the first two decks that I worked with in October were Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot and the Oracle of Oddities. Now this deck I have talked about a couple of different times on my channel because I bought it last year. I bought it in November of last year, and I've been holding on to it, waiting for October to roll around so that I could work with it. And this deck did not disappoint. I absolutely adore this deck. I adore the artwork, and the collage work on this deck is just seamlessly done. It is so beautiful. And the messages between these two decks, I mean, look at this. The Emperor and Opposition. How beautiful is that? I love these two decks together. But I think even though I was waiting for this deck to be like this time of year to work with this deck, I think that this is a deck that I will actually use year round, because I really like the messages. I really like the energy of the deck. And even though it definitely has an autumn feel, so even like the title card here says Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot of Monsters and the Macabre and Autumn Scenes, I still feel like this is a deck that I would probably use year round, even though I like hoarded it and held it off special for this time of year. Now that I've kind of gotten to know it, we've worked together a little bit, I really feel like it's one that I'll pull in throughout the year as well. So look at this, 8 of Swords and Toxic. This was one of those pairings that, I don't know why I did that, that I just worked beautifully together. 9 of Coins and Beauty. So one of the ways that I really like to use my Tarot and Oracle together, as I mentioned in my videos that we had all throughout Oracle October, was that I really like to kind of put my Oracle deck in the middle as sort of the focal point, and then to use the tarot to expand upon that message. And I did that a lot with these two decks. And so when we see it in this aspect where we see the focus is union, and maybe if we're looking at what do we need to leave behind, do we need to step into to create that union, we need to leave behind that 2 of Swords energy and step into the Fool. And this particular pairing worked beautifully for that. I often talk about my pairings in my monthly reflections, because this is the way that I generally work with my decks when I work with Tarot and Oracle together. We'll see in the next couple decks that I don't always incorporate Oracle into my readings, but when I do, this tends to be the way that I really like to do it. And I usually find that the messages are just so beautiful. I love that the way the Oracle of Oddities really creates some space. So we have what we would, really consider white space, even though it's not white, it's, paper colored, it's parchment colored, but it really creates space between your two cards. So it really creates that idea of bringing them together, as well as creating space so that you can see the interactions and the conversations between them. And I think that's just really beautiful. Here we have the 6 of Wands, Lust, and the Devil. Well, it's kind of an interesting little combo though. I really love doing these flip throughs. This is something that I do even like off camera. Sometimes I'll just pull out 2 decks like this and I'll just flip through them in this way. I give them each a shuffle, set them down and flip through them and see what messages come out, because there's always something interesting to be discovered. So here we have the Ace of Cups, Transformation, and the Tower. So the Tower and Transformation, that's really talking about some big change, right? We're really focusing in on the idea of change, transformation, of things falling apart so that maybe better things can come together. And here we have the Ace of Cups. So really tapping into that essential, you know, that root of our emotions. And I think that's just gorgeous. Love that. Creepy Sun card, but I love it. Creepy Sun card. So we have the Sun, Knowledge, and the Eight of Cups. Beautiful. I mean, I could sit here and flip through both of these decks just like all day long. I just love to do that. I think it's a gorgeous way to really work with your decks. These two together just make for a beautiful conversation on your table. There's so much depth that you can discover. So many messages that come through these pairings. I just love working with them together. So that is the Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's Tarot and the Oracle of Oddities. This is the 2nd edition. There are 3 in total, and this one is number 2. So the next deck that I worked with, the next tarot that I worked with is the Ghosts and Spirits, I believe. Yes, the Ghosts and Spirits Tarot by Lisa Hunt. Now, I have quite a few of Lisa Hunt's decks, and I really, really love them. This one, however, and we kind of had a rough start, a bumpy start to our sort of working relationship. I had not used this deck. The 3 of Swords is upside down. Interesting. I had not used this deck previously. I mean, I've had it for like a long time, and it was one of those that I'm always just like, oh, I'll hold on till Halloween, till October, and that's when I'll work with it. Again, I think this is one that you could actually use year round, but this deck and I, we had some trouble communicating, let's just say. I kind of had a little bit of a disconnect between the little stories in the Little White Book. So the Little White Book is actually quite substantial, because we have a little story about what ghost or spirit is included on each of the cards, which I think is really wonderful. But sometimes I had trouble like connecting that story to my reading. And so I think that's a little bit where the disconnect was. And when I kind of stopped trying to incorporate that as much into my reading, we kind of got along a little bit better. And I think maybe it's just I would need to work a little bit deeper with the stories in the little guidebook, which I think are fantastic and really wonderful this time of year. But I definitely think that it's something that I would have to work with a little bit more. When I kind of put the Little White Book away and just kind of worked with the deck in terms of what was going on in the imagery and, you know, of course, my tarot associations, it worked a little bit better that way. We got along a little bit better. So that was the deck that I used during the 2nd week in October, and that is the Ghosted Spirits Tarot by Lisa Hunt. So the next week I worked with the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. Now, I've talked about this deck before on my channel. I think I talked about it probably last October, because that was, I think, really the first time that I ever spent some real time with this deck. It's taken me a little bit of time to again make a connection with this deck. And now that we've kind of come to an understanding, I am really enjoying working with it. It kind of has an almost like dark humor to it, a kind of like a cheeky energy that I really do quite enjoy. And it took me a little bit to kind of just, I don't know, not necessarily come around to that, but really to, I think, understand and appreciate it. I just had to give it some time, had to work with it. I mean, look at this Judgment card. This Judgment card is awesome. It just, you know, it's just one of those decks that I just had to spend the time with it, had to really get to know it, get to know its personality or energy, if you want to look at it that way. Love this Seven of Pentacles. It has some cards in it that I think are just really, really fantastic. I think it has my favorite world card of like all time in here. I do believe this deck is currently out of print. It's hard to get. It's a Baba Studio deck. They tend to be really expensive once they go out of print. So yeah, just another really great deck that, you know, has really fantastic energy to it. And I really enjoyed working with it kind of once we found our footing, once we found our place together and the way that, you know, we interact with each other. I know that sounds really weird because it's not like a person, it's a deck, but I do want to just see like amazing Hermit card. Quite like the Six of Swords. That Six of Cups is cute too. Where is... Oh, love the Wheel of Fortune where, you know, she's having her cards read. That's a great one. The Devil is a really powerful card in this deck too. Quite like it. So there it is. There's the World card. I just absolutely love this World card. One of the things that I really like about it is like all of these little stones down here, they're actually like skulls. There's skulls worked into all of them. And she's stepping on all the skulls to like reach upward. And I just think that's amazing. I love the color of it. I love the imagery. One of my favorite world cards, perhaps the favorite world card. It's just fantastic. And of course, as we know, you know, Baba Studio decks have amazing card stock, like gorgeous shuffle. So beautiful. Let's just lay a couple cards out. Temperance, the Eight of Pentacles, and the Queen of Cups. I mean, those are just gorgeous together. It's a really fantastic deck, and I'm so glad that I took the time to really get to know it. Like, sometimes I just need to spend a little time with it. Sometimes it takes a little longer for me to connect with the deck. And if I'd have just said, you know, after that first kind of initial week or so that I spent with it, I think last year, if I'd have just said, nah, it's not a deck for me and just thrown in the towel, I would have missed this whole experience that I've had this year with it, which has been really fantastic. So I'm glad I kind of stuck with it, gave it some time and attention, and really was able to kind of get to know the deck on a deeper level, which I think is really key for some of these decks. So that is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. So the last two decks that I worked with, or the last weekly decks that I worked with, were decks that seem to come out in the week of Halloween every year. And that is the Zombie Tarot and the Halloween Oracle. So these two decks tend to be the decks that I pull out the week of Halloween every year. I love working with them. I've of course trimmed and edged my Halloween tarot. It did have borders on it, and now it's like almost the perfect size to work with the Zombie Tarot. I haven't done any edging to the Zombie Tarot yet, but at some point I would like to. These two decks work really, really well together. I love the energy of the Zombie Tarot. I love the cheekiness of it. I love the kind of retro 50s vibe. It's just, this is like my extent. This and Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's tarot is kind of like the extent of my creepy decks. That's about as creepy as I go. And this is more fun creepy. But I think that the messages between these two decks are really amazing. So again, because I tend to use my tarot, my oracle decks in this 3-card fashion, I love a 3-card reading. That's like my go-to. I think that that works for just about anything. And it tends to be the one that I use like week after week after week. It's always like a 3-card reading. That's like my baseline. Sometimes I extend it out from there, but this tends to be my baseline reading. So here we have the skeleton with strength. And if we look at what is going on around strength, so if that's our focal point, what's going on around the skeleton providing that sort of inner strength, right? Because the skeleton, it's inside of us. So we're really looking at inner strength here. I do want to point out that I do not use the guidebook with my oracle decks most of the time. So what I'm spouting out is just whatever intuitive hits that come to me. It is by no way, shape, or form a reflection of what is written in the actual guidebook about these decks, because I just do my own thing. So when we're looking at this inner strength, right, we need to tap into that inner strength in order to channel that high priestess energy. And I love that in this card, she's sitting on the skull, get down deep in the bones, but allowing that to really serve as kind of the backbone to our practice here. But we're also kind of, in a sense, rising above the material as well to get deep down underneath. And here we have the Queen of Swords, and I love this, like this grandma. She's sitting here with her gun in her hand. There's a little foot in the trap, kind of luring things in. Like, she knows what she's about, right? She's not afraid to be who she is. She's not afraid to speak her mind, do her thing. You know, I love this idea of being really at home with who you are and being willing to speak your truth and to defend that. I think that's really, really beautiful. I think that there is a lot of depth that can be found in these cards as well. I love these together. Here we have Death. The eternal cycle begins. We have the Empress and the Queen of Cups. I mean, what a wonderful nurturing energy to surround the idea of death. I love that this is actually a zombie eating a brain. So it's like, you know, you got to do the things that sustain you. That's important. And here we have the mother with the little zombie child. You know, you can nurture who you are and what you are about. Nurture yourself through that change and be who you are. You know, do what nourishes you. Do what you need to do in order to create that change. I love that. I could do this all day. The Hanged Man, the Apple, risk and reward. Always risk and reward in the Hanged Man, and the King of Wands. Again, just beautiful. I mean, I won't sit here and go through every card combo because we'd be here forever. And here we have, oh my goodness, the Wheel of Fortune with the spider. I mean, how perfect is that? This is about community and web weaving. I mean, it's all about bringing things together. And I know I just said I wasn't going to do all that, right? So let's just flip through a couple more just so we can see them together. These two decks just work really, really beautifully together. I do want to just real quick pull out, even though I didn't actually pair these two together this month, this combo also works, and maybe I just have combos on the brain because that's what I've been doing recently on my channel. This combo also works really well with the Oracle of Oddities. Let's pull those two. So now we have a fresh stack. So here we have the King of Swords, Friendship, and the Six of Hazards. Gorgeous. I'm totally getting off topic here, but that's okay. I mean, I did work with these decks, just not these two together, but I just wanted to show you that these two decks actually do pair together really well. So another gorgeous, fun pairing for the week, and that was the Zombie Tarot and the Halloween Oracle. So another deck that I used and kind of incorporated throughout the month was the new Seasons of the Witch Samhain Oracle. Now this one I just recently did a walkthrough on my channel, and I do have to say that I was really excited to get this deck. It's a beautiful one, and I really throw that anywhere. I really enjoyed incorporating this deck into my practice throughout the month. I used it kind of like as a standalone. So I would pull a card and read a message from the book. Now this is definitely a deck that I could see you know, pairing beautifully with some of my tarots. Somebody on my Facebook group had mentioned pairing it with the Sasarabito Tarot. I think that would be amazing. If you have these two decks, Sasarabito and the Seasons of the Witch, maybe give that a try. Let me know what you think too. But I really enjoyed working with this deck more in just a one-on-one to kind of get to know it a little bit better to start with. So I spent, you know, would pull a card, spend some time looking at the card, reflecting on it. Sometimes I did some journaling on it. Sometimes I just read what was in the book and really just spent some time thinking about it and pulling that energy in for the rest of the day. And I really enjoyed that practice with it because it felt a little bit more kind of more like a mindfulness card or an intention practice than as I have done with kind of the Oracle Oddities and the Halloween Oracle, where I was just using them to support a tarot reading or to provide a focus for a tarot reading. Whereas this deck I was using more as a sort of meditation type deck. And I think it works really beautifully for that. But I am excited to actually pair it with tarot too, because I think it's going to work beautifully for that. But I really enjoyed working with it. I really do quite like the guidebook. There's some wonderful write-ups in there that I think are really helpful. I love this card. It's one of my favorites in the deck. Something about that ancestor energy just really speaks during this time of year, you know, around Samhain when the veil is thin, of course, but I also really feel like just this time of year in general, I'm more open to that sort of energy as well, just me personally. I also love that this has a coming of winter card, because a lot of times when we see seasonal cards in decks, we have just like the one seasonal card, right? But there's kind of 2 to 3 aspects of each season. And I love seeing that reflected in a deck. We have like the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, and the end of the season. And again, we can see that also here reflected in the third harvest. I think that when all of these, the whole wheel of the year is done with this whole Seasons of the Witch project, I think that is going to make for like an amazing seasonal oracle overall. And I'm really excited to be able to check that out and try that and work with it, because, you know, seasonal energy is really important to me in my practice. And that is something that I do want to talk about more in depth later on my channel. As I'm thinking about it, I quite love this silence card as well. So that's another deck that I really enjoyed working with this October. I feel like it's one that I'd probably use all throughout fall, and so I'm actually looking forward to incorporating it more into my practice as well. So that is the Seasons of the Witch Samhain Oracle. So another deck that I worked with all throughout October was actually the Literary Witches Oracle. And I actually used this in place of sort of my other self-care decks and used it on during my Sunday reading. So instead of doing a sort of self-care message, I did a message with the Literary Witches. And this is actually the full book that came, I think a year or two or maybe more prior to the deck. I've had this book quite a long time. And I used this as my primary oracle message to look up the writers in this book. And I do have a whole video on my whole setup with this deck. But what I also did was I pulled from the little guidebook that actually came with the deck. I made a little pamphlet that just has the little material cards in it. And I would use those as my message from that Literary Witch. And so that's kind of how I used it throughout the month. I do have videos on that. And this is a deck that I've trimmed to be all kinds of weird. So basically what I did with this one is I took the Literary Witches cards and I left them fairly full size and just trimmed them down to be borderless. And so we have each of the Literary Witches here. They are all represented in this book as well. And what I love to do is pull one of these lovely ladies and read about them in the guidebook. And that is kind of where I start my work with this deck. And then what I do is I take these are the Witches Materials cards. They were originally the same size as the deck itself. Because there was so much white space on them, or so much blank space, I actually cut them down to be a square deck so that I can use them a little bit like a Lenormand, meaning that not that I read them with Lenormand associations. I use the little associations that are in that little guidebook that I cut down. And what I do is just pull a Literary Witch, and then I would pull, and I don't read them reversed in any way, shape, or form, but I would just pull 3 cards for the message from that Literary Witch. And that is how I kind of do my work with this deck. And you'll see that reflected in my journal too when we take a look at that, because you'll see that's how I used it. So I would basically pull a card, read the information in the book, and then I would pull my 3 cards for a message as if it's coming from this particular Literary Witch, but obviously not not literally, but kind of from the energy or what that literary witch kind of encompasses, what she embodies, kind of like an archetype, right? And then I pull these and I look up, what does the snail mean? What does the claw mean? And what does the wolf mean? And then that's where my message comes from. And so I bring in those three things wrapped into the story, the energy or the archetype of the literary witch. So for all of this month, every Sunday, kind of in lieu of my self-care Sunday spreads, I would pull a literary witch and then use the material cards to gain my message, working, of course, closely with the book that, this is actually the separate book, so it doesn't come with it, it's the separate book, but working closely with that. And I do have full videos on both of these sort of projects that I did, and I will leave that linked in the description box below. So that was the Literary Witches Oracle and the separate book. So one other deck that I've been working with throughout October and am still continuing to work with is the Hush Tarot. Now, I haven't done a walkthrough or anything of this deck on my channel because, to be perfectly honest, I'm still finding my way with this deck, and I'm doing a deep dive study of it. So I'm, use my little tarot bound process, and I've been working my way through this deck in a deep dive study. I don't want to talk too much about it, but it is a deck that I have been using all throughout October as I've been working my way through these cards. At this point, I have mixed feelings about the deck. I really do. I mean, it's gorgeous, but I have mixed feelings about how I'm able to work with it. And so I want to wait until I finish my deep dive to really talk about that more in detail, just because, I want it to be a fair assessment. And so I'm waiting till I finish that process. But sometimes it's kind of a long process, and it's going to run probably throughout November for me as well. But I kind of just wanted to share with you what I've been doing. So I've been creating this journal for it, and I'll just show you a couple of the first few pages and what I've been doing. Like, here's my initial impressions, here's my intention, and then here's the work that I've been doing with this deck. So I'm making a color copy of it. I've been doodling some key element that I pull out of the card itself onto the page. Whatever's written in the colored text is kind of the key phrases or things that I've picked up from the guidebook, and what is in the black is my initial first impressions, and I've wrote the keywords down at the bottom as well. And then so my intention is to go through the deck as I normally do with my tarot bound studies, and then I've left space so that I can go back and do kind of a second pass or a reflections after I've worked with the deck a little bit more. But I'll just show you a couple of the pages. I don't want to totally give too much away because I am still working through it, but you can see that this is kind of another way that I do the tarot bound study, is to let me do one more page, is to kind of pull in all those different elements together into my one study of a deck. And I've been doing some readings as well as trying to do some study work with it to try to get to know the cards and understand why each card was chosen for the position that it was, because sometimes that's where my my trip up has been with this deck, is sometimes the artwork that's chosen doesn't really mesh with my understanding of the card in its general sense. So I'm working through that and trying to figure out how that artwork relates back to that tarot meaning. And so this is a process that I have been going through with this particular deck. And of course, I'll do just a little shameless plug, excuse my my little not for resale across the top, because this was a test run from Amazon, but this is the guide that I use. This is my tarot bound guide, and it's a process that I go through that really helps me work through each of the cards individually and getting to know the deck on a deeper level. And so I've been working my way through this. It is available in print, in this printed form, without the not for resale banner on Amazon. And then you can also buy a digital PDF copy on my website as well. So that's a process that I've been working through all throughout October as well. And so I just wanted to share that, even though I'm not quite ready to share my thoughts and reflections on this deck quite yet. I did want to just share that I'm still working through that process, and that's something that I've been working on all throughout October and will continue to work on into November. So I also want to share with you just a couple of goodies that I got in October that I was super excited about. I got some Peggy bags that were made for my decks. I wanted something that was purple, and I sent Lisa this picture of, this is my Hecate journal, and this is like, I love this thing. And I was like, I need something to match it, and look how beautiful. So beautiful. I'm not going to actually pull out the deck because that's like something that I need to address in a different video, but the other deck that I was looking for a home for was for my Art of Love tarot, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite decks. And I just have to show you, like, look at this match. Is that just not a match made in heaven? And the little details here with the hearts. I hope you can see that. And gorgeous, just all the way through. I mean, just fabulous, just fabulous. So I was super excited to get that because these decks have been living in Ziploc bags. I know that's like terrible, but I just couldn't find anything that I liked that really felt like it matched. And Peggy and Lisa did a wonderful job selecting the fabric and creating the bags. And these are just amazing quality. So if you love these drawstring bags, definitely check out Peggy's shop. I will leave a link in the description box below because they are fantastic. So one more goodie that I want to share with you that I got in October is this awesome book. And I need to move things away, and my tea has totally gone cold because I've been so busy just rambling that I haven't drank any. This is a wonderful guidebook, sort of grimoire / art book that goes along with Madame Lydia Wilhelmina's tarot. This is by the creator of the deck, obviously, and it is available for purchase on Amazon. And this thing, it's massive. So let me just clear space and make sure I'm in frame. So this book is just, it is so gorgeously produced. I love all the details. I mean, it's so up my alley. It's got these big, full, huge images of the cards, which are just lovely. So if you want to really sink into the detail, you have that here. There's information about the cards. There's stories. There's little tidbits all throughout this book, which is just amazing. And it's so funny because I'm working on a book that's really similar to this for a different project. And so when the creator sent me this, I was so excited to be able to take a look at it because look how beautiful it is. And it goes through all of the cards for the entire deck. And get back here to some of the minors. Don't have quite as much detail. Really what's just on here is the same thing that's in the smaller guidebook that comes with the deck. So I think I forgot to show that, but this is the reference guide that comes with the book, and you can see here that the information is pretty much the same, but it's just, presented in this gorgeous kind of art book here, which is absolutely beautiful. And some of them, there's just all these wonderful little touches to it. It's just gorgeous. I've had so much fun flipping through this book. Sometimes I would just pull a card from the deck, not a reading, just pull a card from the deck and then go to that page in this book and then just kind of see what was on there, read the stories that are written, just really dive into the text that's in this book because it's really kind of awesome. So she has, about the suits and things like that. Here's that Ace of Cups we were looking at earlier. Beautiful. And you can really see the detail. I love these big pictures. I love just pulling a card and then coming here just to be able to see it even larger. I mean, I wouldn't want a deck this size to actually read with because I wouldn't be able to hold it or shuffle it or work with it. But I love having it available to me in this book. It is just beautiful. I mean, this is just gorgeous. I like even just looking through it. So here's a whole thing about the Victorian language of flowers. So it's all about the flower associations. And just, I don't know, there's just random bits of goodness in here. It's just awesome. Really, really interesting book that she's put together. It's beautiful. It's different. There's a lot of interesting little tidbits, little nuggets within the pages. It's just awesome. And then you can see, so here's a little bit about, it's called, ethereal oils for calming purposes. Well, it's in relation to the Four of Swords card. So how perfect is that? I mean, the tag here that she's got is rest in peace. And then we have some information about calming oils. It's just beautiful. Just little things just woven throughout, which I think is just really lovely. That was another really exciting addition to my collection. So it says an illustrated look into the thoughts, knowledge, and ideas behind Madame Lydia's Dark Tarot. How gorgeous is that? So October was a really exciting month. Not only did I work with a bunch of great decks that we saw, but I also did a series or a little short series that I had kind of called my Oracle October, where I shared with you how I work with tarot and Oracle decks together primarily, and also just a little bit about how I incorporate Oracle into my practice as well. That was a lot of fun. I've been wanting to do that for like a very long time. So finally being able to get everything together and get that whole series out there was really fantastic. I had a couple of great decks come in October that I was super excited about that I actually added to my schedule because they came in after my videos were already set for October. So I went ahead and squeezed those in because they were totally worth checking out, and that was the Mystic Masters by our very own Danny Mystic. I did a full walkthrough of that deck, which was fantastic. I had a wonderful time going through that deck. I actually had to do quite a bit of editing on that video because it was super long, like really long. And so I had to like cut it all down to make it a little bit more watchable because I kind of rambled. There's a lot in that deck. The other one was the Memento Mori by Claire Goodchild. I did that one. We just looked at that one recently on Halloween. That was so exciting. I was so excited for that deck. It's one that I was really looking forward to getting because it's like this 2 decks in one, and that was so cool to be able to look through it. I cannot wait to continue working with it. But it also kind of reminded me that, hey, like I have a bunch of Lenormand decks too, and something about fall just kind of pulls out this wanting to do Lenormand for me. So now that we've looked back on some of the fun things that happened in October, let's talk about what's going to be coming up this month on my channel. So I have a couple of walkthroughs of some great decks, one that I backed on Kickstarter, one that has been hanging out with me for a while and is just now really kind of come into its own in my collection. And I also did a VR to Juliet Peekaboo Rose. She did this fantastic deck delights and deterrence video. I'm like so late to the party, but I did do a VR to that, which is coming toward the end of the month on my channel. And one of the videos that I'm most excited about for this month is actually coming up next week, and that is my classic RWS decks that I missed out on. And that one actually took a lot of time and effort to research. I had a lot of fun working through it, and it's one that I think I'm most excited about for this particular month. I'm excited for the video to come out, but I'm also really excited to actually really dive into working with those decks this month. That's going to be really fun. So I guess we'll see in my November reflections how I get along with those decks in the end. So that's just a little peek at what's coming up this month on my channel. As always, I hope that you had a beautiful October, and I wish you many blessings moving into November. Thank you for joining me today. You will find links for the decks featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.